You bastard. God gave me permission and it just didn't start it automatically. Good grief, you piece of shit. God damn it.
Hey, at least we figured it out now. We're only a little ways in,
Yeah. God, all fucking mighty. Okay. 3, 2, 1.
Begin Podfix Network transmission. In 3, 2, 1.
Whether you're fly fishing in a stream, getting those ankles wet, or deep in the ocean, casting nets, fish nerds. Fish nerds. Fish nerds. It's a podcast.
Hello and welcome to the Fish Nerds, a show about fish, fishing, and eating fish. I'm Clay Groves, Chief Executive Fish Nerd, licensed fishing guide, your best friend. And boy, it's been a minute, but I'm so lucky because I got John King, my beautiful co-host, with me tonight. Hi, John.
Hey, stranger, where you been, man?
Oh my gosh, John. You know, life turns over sometimes, and it's really hard to keep up with it.
Hey, tell me about it. I thought things got simpler as you got older. Wrong-o.
No. Yeah.
Wrong-o.
Well, as you know, I was working as a disc jockey for the last few years, plus as bartending, plus as guiding, plus I think I had 4 jobs totaled altogether. I was working like 70 hours a week like a dog. And I decided that was too much for me. And I saw a teaching gig open at the local middle school. I went for it and I got the gig. And I thought, no problem, I'm going to get to podcasting in September. And then I forgot how to teach and how to learn a bunch of stuff and spent all my time practicing my craft. And now I'm back in the classroom teaching again. Incidentally, John, when I first started this podcast, I was a science teacher in the same school.
Wow, that's fantastic. Well, I thought something like that. I thought you'd been a teacher. And I bet your gorgeous wife is having a bit of a smirk over the whole bit because she's a career teacher herself, correct?
That's correct.
And
she teaches kindergarten and 1st grade, and I teach 7th and 8th grade.
And so you've got the kids, or she's got the kids while they're cute, and you've got them as they turn ugly. And
when they're weird looking, lanky teenagers, and they think they're all really good looking and funny, and they say things, John, that I don't know. The language has changed. They say things like skibbity toilet and Riz and Ohio and Sigma and Alpha and all the things. And none of that means anything as far as I can tell.
That's awesome. And I'm sorry, I'm not knocking junior high kids.
If I get into a debate with a kid, a power struggle with a kid, I'm like, I need you to be quiet. And he's like, Mr. Groves, he's arguing with me. And I'm saying, you don't get to argue with me because you used the word skibbity today. And if you use the word skibbity, you don't have the wherewithal to have an argument with an adult. So you're done. Sorry, buddy.
Yeah. Groves rules.
Groves rules. Whose name's on the door? Mine or yours? Knock it up.
Well, I should knock junior high kids. I love them, but I know from my teaching friends that it is, it takes special skill. And I remember my favorite junior high teachers, and they were all really special people. And I do remember that being an extremely difficult time in my life. So, yeah.
It's my favorite age kid because they're so bonkers. And they're completely out of their minds. But once you get them where you want them and you get their attention, they're funny, they're interesting, they're almost cool, and they're fun to be around. And the classroom I took over this year, I was confident on my first day of school that those kids had never seen a teacher or a classroom in their life. So I had to start from zero. It was chaos. And that no longer is it chaos. It's still chaotic, but it's not like it was. So we're getting there.
Well, you are in your element because you teaching is part performance. And I know that's
not part, it's all.
Yeah. It's all. And I've noticed you've already been doing some silly stuff. Getting to flex your acting muscles and getting to flex your DJ charm and all the rest of it. So Mr. Groves class sounds like something kids are going to be like, oh, you definitely got to take. I don't know how big the school is where they got options or anything, but it would be when I went to junior high, it was like, oh, hopefully you'll get Mr. Groves, that kind of thing. They
don't have a choice.
They don't have a choice. All right. So that's where you've been, everybody. Thank you to everybody that's written me and messaged me. And is Clay still alive? The answer is obviously yes. Is he okay? Is his health broken? Is he a broken man? No, he's just as crazy.
I'm a broken man, John.
But anyway, we sure appreciate you listeners that have been checking in, wondering where this fine man is.
Yeah, and John, I appreciate you keeping this boat floating. I mean, I would have just turned it off for a few months, and you were like, nope, it's got to keep going. And so I appreciate you and everybody you've had come on the show and keep it going. You've made some great episodes.
Well,
and John, you've gotten to be a solid host. You did great.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you very much. And thanks to the 2 or 3 listeners that wrote me about the last show and said I did
That's all that listened was 2 or 3. That's
well, then I got 100% approval rate, dude.
Look at you. Look at you.
So there you go.
Yeah.
There you go. All right, man. So we got caught up with our lovely leader here, the chief executive. Before I give the show's rundown, let's talk a little bit about fall fishing. What's your general thing on fall fishing?
I love it until about October, when we're not allowed to fish anymore up here in New Hampshire. Everything shuts down. So I don't do much fall, like into the fall fishing. September is when lake trout fishing heats up, and it gets really good in October, but you're not allowed to fish in October here in New Hampshire for lake trout and salmon and stuff like that. And then the rivers all shut down in mid-October.
Yeah.
So you can't fish the rivers either, because they want to give those fish a chance to make new fish. So
Exactly. But you still go, look, I've been in touch. We got a series of fishing reports coming up here. I know it shuts down on October 15th. But you can still go bass fishing, crappie fishing, stuff like that, right?
Yeah, I can. But I haven't.
Okay. But I have, well, I have as much as I can, although this is the worst fishing summer, fishing season I've had. I mean, of course, in a long time. Here in Kansas, of course, we're 365. If you want to go, you can go. But wow, just been busy and this, that, and the other thing. And my friends have been busy. I mean, it's like I call people, say, hey, I got a gap, let's do it. No can do. Got adulting to do. Got life attacking me. I can't go. But what I was really getting at with fall fishing is, there's people who either are repeating something they believe that isn't true. Imagine that. And then people who, which is, it's just like spring fishing, but in reverse. It's like wrong. And then, the temperatures might be similar or the same and this and that and the other thing, but that is so far from the truth. And then, the challenges and the brain rack you go through going, why, what I was doing 3 weeks ago or a month ago that was working great isn't doing worth a darn right now. And, I've been on it. I've been, it is a puzzler. I feel like summer, winter, even if fishing can get tough, I know what I'm doing and I know what I need to do.
Mm-hmm.
Spring is spring. And spring is like the only thing you worry about in spring is I'm catching, but am I catching as much as I ought to?
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, that's most of the season. I mean, everything has a pattern to it. And once you learn the pattern, then you got it. And fall has its own pattern because as lakes cool down, then eventually they're going to turn over on you. And that's when everything gets really challenging.
Well, it's also challenging
for ice.
It's challenging too, because you're in the summer and your feeding periods are compressed. Either you get up before sunrise, get down there and get going, or you hang out and start fishing later. And the sun takes a long time to set in the summer. So you got a good long evening to chase them. But in the fall, the feed is everywhere. There's little 1-inch everything, little 1-inch bluegills, little minnows, the tadpoles, the frogs are everywhere. There is so much food that a lot of times fish are feeding here and there, and they don't necessarily concentrate their feed, and your lure has a lot of competition. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And those bigger lures that worked before, now you got if you want to catch a bluegill in Kansas in the fall, you either got to fish a size 14, 16, 20 midge, or accidentally catch them on a stick bait while you're fishing for small bass, because they either want something huge or they want something tiny. And that little 1-inch lure that you were catching them on before, not working. So I decided to do some fall fishing stuff for us tonight. And what do you say I give a rundown about the show?
Let's go.
Okay, we're going to start off with some fishing reports from some of our contributors and some of our listeners, and we're going to talk about that a little bit. And then we got Joe Henry from the Lake of the Woods Tourism Bureau. He is the executive director of Lake of the Woods Tourism, and he's going to give us a really exciting report on what's going on up there at Lake in the Woods. And then we're going to do a kind of a short fish in the news. I have some other stuff that I wanted to do, so I kept this one a little shorter, and we've got a sad story to start, but we've got two other super cool stories about environmental triumph to finish. And then we've got an interview with our beloved Laura Williams, the biologist for the Maine Audubon Society, and she is in charge of their lead-free fishing education program. And why? Because that girl can fish like nobody's business. That's why. And she can talk the talk and walk the walk with the fishers, and they know her, they trust her, they believe her, and she's going to tell us about a recent victory she has had. And that'll be the first half of our show. And then you suggested that we do some Halloween stuff.
Thought we should.
So, yeah, I took you to
It's
heart.
the season.
It is the season when, in fact, I follow some people online, and I have some friends that just love Halloween so much they just call October spooky season.
Mhm.
And it is the last holiday to hold out against Christmas, since Thanksgiving has pretty much been overrun and disappeared under the Christmas frenzy, the holiday frenzy. In fact, people consider it the beginning of the holiday season, so it kind of gets swept away. But Halloween is still standing alone, and we're going to have some things about scary fish. We are going to have some things about scary stories that involve fishing, and some of our listeners contributed to this, and I'm really excited about that. And we're going to end up with a classic. I went fishing and got abducted and probed by a aliens story that is one of the greatest ever told. And then we're going to get some thank yous and get on out of here. But that's the show.
Sounds like a show. Sounds like a show. Let's get into it.
So let's start off with some fishing reports. Give me a fishing report, Clay.
There's no fishing in New Hampshire. I have not been fishing. I haven't fished since beginning of September. And I went white perch fishing to my tried and true spot that was good all summer. And I had a crew that wanted to catch and cook white perch on the boat. So I got my grill on the boat. I went to my spot, and we fished and fished and fished and fished and fished, and couldn't pay the white perch to bite, but they were determined to eat fish. So we went yellow perch fishing instead.
Yes.
On Ospey Lake, and we couldn't find any reasonably sized fish. I said, I don't care. There's no size limit on these fish. Next fish we catch, we're eating. And we ate about 10 4-inch yellow perch for dinner that night. We made tacos out of them. They were delightful. What a pain in the neck. But I was determined to put fish in our bellies. So we did it.
Well, I love that story. I love that story because anybody that's gone camping and counted on Mother Nature to provide knows that that's a bigger trick than you think. It ain't like in the movies, man.
John, I used to sell, when I first started guiding, my ice fishing trips were all catch and eat. And I learned very quickly how unreliable fish are. And I did that for one season and said, I'm not doing that anymore.
You know what I'd have done?
I was so successful for white perch all year.
Yeah.
I thought I can guarantee this. And then that's what I screwed up. I can't guarantee it.
Well, if I had that catch and eat, I would keep a bag of frozen tilapia in the cooler. And when things were bad, I'd grab it out and throw it at one of the clients, catch, and then eat it. Let's eat it. Okay. You caught it, we'll eat it.
What I did when I was selling those trips as catch and eat is I would actually collect good fish and have them in a baggie in the cooler. So if they weren't catching edible fish, I had fish to feed them. But this was not one of those. I was confident 3 days before, that same spot at the same time of day, the fish came rolling in on time, and it was fish after fish after fish. I was sure. I was sure of it. I was confident, John.
Oh, well, it's so hard to get that second performance, and the third performance is almost unheard of. But you've got to blame. You can't blame the white perch.
I blame me.
Oh, okay. Because you got to blame the emerald shiners or the minnows or whatever they were feeding on. They moved on, and the perch went with them.
Yeah. Well, incidentally, so after we were done and failed, we were cruising back, and I said, let's just do one cast for fun in the same spot we've been fishing all the time. And guess what we found?
the school moved back in.
Big school's there. Yeah, but it was getting dark. We had to get off the lake because it's
Time of day.
mile long trip up a river back to the boat launch. So we had to get out the water. Yeah.
The life of a guide, everybody. The life of the guide. If you
Uh,
think you're gonna, I want to be a guide so I can fish all the time. Wrong.
I'll tell you, being so I run a fishing guide service and a pontoon boat service, and I would say 80% of my clients don't fish, and I charge less for fishing trips than I do for boat rides, but I work 10 times harder. Yeah.
Okay,
So
well, I love
that's the game.
that. I love that report, Mr. Groves. I love it, love it, love it. So hit and miss, and that's what a lot of people are experiencing now, including myself out here in Kansas. I go here, I go there, I go to the test pond most of the time because I can't get anywhere else. And I finally, realized that even though it's been hot, it's the warmest October on record in Kansas. Scary stuff, but put it out of your mind. But you think, hey, it's hot, so maybe this summer stuff will just keep going. It won't, because there's a change in the light level. There's a change in the amount of daylight. There's a change. And I used to think you flip from fishing early in the morning, like you do in the summer, to now you fish late in the afternoon because the water warms up. Well, it has not as much to do with the water warming up, because the water's not that cold yet, as it is just the light. They just respond to that shorter sunset. And
well, they're going to go through hormonal changes, whether the temperatures get to where they want to be or not.
Exactly.
And so they're going to get into their spawning modes or getting to their feed modes for winter. Either way, winter's coming and they know it. And so they're preparing.
Well, they do know it. And all around the country is what I'm getting back from a lot of people, is that there is dryness, lack of rain here and there. Other places are like, okay, decent rain, things are staying all right. And one of those places happens to be Southern Missouri. We talk about the Ozarks a lot on this show because it's one of the greatest fishing areas in the world. And I don't know, it's something that folks in Eastern Kansas go down and do a lot. Anyway, we know the Hatcher brothers, Aaron at Femboy Fishing and Michael at Siren String and Stream. And they sent me a little report that they're still catching some nice smallies, catching a lot of trout, especially if you're willing to go into the stocker trout areas and check them out, because the streams down there are still staying pretty cold. That karst is a limestone type environment where there's a lot of percolation underneath the earth. And so the water comes out cold, and then they have the whole Beaver Lake, Table Rock, Bull Shoals, White River flowing in between all those. So you get a lot of release out of the bottom of these reservoirs that keep the water cold. So there's trout and smallies still to be had in the Ozarks. Get on down there, because it may not be a spectacular fall as you have in New Hampshire, but it's very woodsy and very pretty. And if you have a chance, don't be afraid. Go down there.
I heard if you dress just right, as Femboy Fishing does, you can attract more fish.
You do. You absolutely do.
Got to wear the right clothes, though.
You got to wear the right clothes, and you also have to be as sporting as Aaron is, because Aaron is a sportsman. It's very refreshing. He's great. But yeah, I think if you want to dress up like a Japanese anime character, do it. Do it. Hey, it's Halloween.
Yeah, and fun trivia, John. Femboy Fishing episode that you recorded here on the Fish Nerds podcast a few episodes ago. One of our hottest downloads of the year of 2024. One of the biggest downloads.
Wow, fantastic.
So more listeners to that than any other episode this year. I think it's number one. Wow,
I wouldn't be surprised. Well, the LGBT community loves him. The regular fishers love him. He's quite the human being. He's quite the guy, and I am flattered and grateful that he took time out. And of course, his brother is just a good old boy, but he's he's an EMT. He's a good man too. So the Hatcher brothers, we love them. We're going to keep them around as long as we can. But let's get something up your way. You know this guy. Steve. He goes by Steve NcAngler online now. And
that is Steve Angers, owner of the North Country Angler Fly Shop here in North Conway, where I live.
That's right. That's right. And we are always pulling for this gentleman and his business, and because he really takes care of his customers. He's really has his finger on the pulse of what's going on in his area. So he's a good one to look up if you're up there and you want to do some fishing of any kind. He says, yeah, the trout season is over, but there's a section of catch and release on the Androscoggin where you can still go and dredge up some nice browns. He says, as for me, I'm switching to bass. And
Yes.
he goes, I'm taking them down with the Sneaky Pete, which is a top water popper, but it's got that bullet shaped head. So when you tug it, it dives a little bit like the little Dahlberg diver pattern and some of these other patterns. It has a big old flared skirt tail with some trailing silly strands. But get yourself some Sneaky Petes. And for subsurface, this red hot lure, it's new to me, but the fly guys have been doing it for a while. It's called a dragon tail. And the original ones, there was some sort of little toy that had these squirmy arms. They were called Squirmy toys. And the saltwater guys were cutting this material off these toys and making tarpon flies with it. And eventually bass and trout people got into it. And now, of course, the fly material people will sell you a better material that is made out of it's called silly worm. And it's actually a little better, a little easier to work with. But you build up the head on this, and then you put that tail on it, and it gives you some wild. It's like fishing a plastic off a fly rod. It really is. It has an insane action, and that's his recommendation. If you got to go subsurface for the bass, get yourself dragon tail, tie yourself a couple of them because you might just get broke off.
Well, and topwater fishing for bass in the fall after the weeds die back is a delight. So get after that a little bit. Yeah.
You got me envy because the ponds and lake clear up around here. I can only imagine what it is up there. You might want to present a little more finesse, but boy, a bass can see that from a long ways.
I like to throw like a Zara spook in the cold and fish it slow. Just move it a little bit, twitch it. Let it sit.
Really?
A little bit, let it sit, and those bass will line up under it, and that little twitch is all they'll need, and they'll just explode up out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they almost always miss. Like, just knock it out of the water, but I don't care. It's fun.
But it's worth it. Yeah. It's worth it. Yeah. Let's not talk about hookup ratio. Let's talk about thrill degree. Oh, it's a thrill. It's always a thrill to see that thing, even if it does just go flying in the air like that.
Oh, it's so fun.
Yeah, you're on it. You're on it. And then I talked to our own Dave Schabel, and he's talked to me a little bit about the Driftless, told me where to look up about the Driftless. The Driftless is an area in southern Minnesota, Wisconsin, and northern Iowa. It's called the Driftless because the glaciers did not form in this area. So it doesn't have, there were glaciers all around, but the last ice age, they did not, overtake this area. So you don't have glacial drift, and you don't have those rolling hills and that kind of stuff like we have here in Kansas from glacial drift. So there's a lot of limestone there that has not been compressed, and so a lot of water flows through it. So they have more cold water fisheries crowded into a smaller area than any place in the world. And I had a little report from the Hatcher brothers on the Driftless, but of course it went away when my external drive blew up. But here we go, the Driftless. Some streams are closed for the fall spawn because they have actually rehabbed some of these streams to where they're brook trout only. They've gotten rid of the rainbows and browns that they stocked in there relentlessly in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, and now are trying to bring some of them back to the original brookies. But there are plenty. There's like 800 miles of stream here, folks, and plenty of it still open for catch and release. And the good thing is that tourists have gone home, so you can pull up on a stream and not see three guys already there. There are three people already there. Solitary fishing. They're still hitting some of the terrestrials because of the warm weather. There's still some around. And of course, brookies like dries, rainbows like dries, browns like dries, but also streamers, of course, because of the number of small fish and so forth that are in the streams at this point. Working really well in the Driftless. Is that on your list, Clay, the Driftless? You ever want to go there?
Nope, never heard of it.
Really? Well, yeah. It's on my list now, brother, because I've heard so much about it. A lot of fly fishers have told me about it. And of course, when the Hatcher brothers say it's worth going, well, then it makes my list right there, right then.
Let's do it.
Well, you know what else I want to do? You know what's on my list is have a bunch of us get to go up to Lake of the Woods.
Oh my gosh, what a party that would be.
It would be so fun.
I wonder what's involved with organizing a Fish Nerds trip, a sponsored trip.
Well,
we should have that conversation sometime. People do it, and then people buy in on these things. I have no idea how it works. But
Well, I don't either, but since Tim is a member of AGLOW, the Outdoor Riders of the Great Lakes, Association of Great Lakes Outdoor Riders is how that acronym works. And he has actually been on one of these trips that AGLOW put together, ice fishing up there. I've been on this place since I could read. Basically, since I could read a sports afield or a field and stream, I've been on this place wanting to go there. All these years later, it was great fishing then. It's still great fishing now.
of course.
Why listen to me talk about it? Let's listen to Joe Henry, Executive Director of the Lake of the Woods Tourism Association. Tell us all about it. Fisher Nation, next up, we've got Joe Henry, and he's going to fill us in on the walleye bite and other things up at Lake of the Woods.
I'll tell you, right now, things are well. We have incredible bite going on right now. Absolutely incredible. We have walleyes and saugers in our system, amongst other fish. But walleyes and saugers are the most sought after fish. Of course, a sauger being a cousin of a walleye, very good eating, not as big as a walleye. And we have 3 parts to Lake of the Woods. Right now, the Rainy River, the fall run is happening. When I say the fall run, what happens is these emerald shiners, so we don't know exactly why for sure, but emerald shiners run up the Rainy River. And of course, a lot of the walleyes from the lake will follow them up because that's their main forage. And right now, we got little, 16-foot boats, 14-foot boats, all the way up to, big walleye boats that are 21 feet. But we got those guys out in the Rainy River, and they're anchored up jigging with emerald shiners. The bite is incredible. We also got a very good lake sturgeon bite going on in the Rainy River. Out in the main lake, the big basin called Big Traverse Bay, and that's big water. It's 30 miles north-south by 25 miles east-west. Great big basin. It's like a big aquarium. It's full of life. It's full of millions of walleyes. The deepest spot in Big Traverse is only 38 feet deep, so the whole thing is prolific. Right now, along the South Shore, there are various schools of walleyes staged in about 20 to 27 feet of water. And I'll tell you what, getting out there, anchoring up and jigging. I just shot a TV show. We took a charter boat out. We anchored up in 26 feet of water, I think it was. And we jigged over the side of the boat. I was using about a 1/4 ounce jig. Gold on Lake of the Woods is a really good color because the water is stained. It's kind of got that coffee tint to it. But gold mixed with glow white and pink for me, putting that emerald shiner on that and dropping it over the side of the boat. And I'll tell you what, it was game on. We got multiple limits of fish. We had to throw a lot of fish back, a lot of small fish, a lot of keepers. Very good fishing. The third area of Lake of the Woods is called the Northwest Angle. And that's that little tip of Minnesota that sticks up into Canada. And that's where the 14,552 islands of Lake of the Woods begin. So up there, it's very different. It's much smaller water because the islands break it up into like little bodies of water. And there's a lot more structure. You got points, you got saddles, you got neck down areas where there's a little bit of current going through. And up there, the fishing's always good up there. And right now in the fall, and not only are people going after the walleyes, monster black crappies are a big thing up there in the fall. And then on top of that, we have big pike that are being caught by everybody, whether you want them or not. And muskies. There's a lot of muskie anglers up in that neck of the woods. That's a world-class muskie fishery. So things are happening on Lake of the Woods. We've had unseasonably warm weather. Yesterday, mid-October, mid-October, we're talking 70s up at Lake of the Woods. That is unheard of. So it's been crazy warm. It's good for the anglers. And, those fish are still moving and they're still going to their haunts because I think the length of day, the amount of daylight in a day, in addition to temperature, water temp, is affecting them.
Well, this is fantastic news. Lake of the Woods has been on my list since I was a little kid. And it's amazing how this fishery has been so well managed and it's still a red hot world-class fishery. It's been a long time since I've been a little kid. So we're talking 40 some years later and it's still incredible fishing. And the one we joked about when we did the sturgeon story about how really got some good crappie fishing, but the crappie guys don't really want that getting out there. But we're gonna tell people, aren't we, Joe?
Well, I'll tell you. Here's the deal: is that we actually have a pretty good population of crappies on the Rainy River right now. And truth be known, a lot of those crappies are caught in those great big charter boat docks with those timbers going down in the water. that breaks the current. It's good structure. It holds bait. But there's actually a good number of crappies in that river. But I'll tell you where crappies are really focused on is up in the islands area. They get them all year long, of course. But boy, the fall right now, they're tightly schooled, kind of getting into their winter hots. A lot of times they're schooled off of deep water points, suspended a little bit, and in some cases, people know where there's sunken trees and things, and they'll go to those areas and fish them. And then, of course, this winter, there'll be some crappie fishing going on again, targeting them with electronics, fishing them in deep water suspended. You get over a group of crappies like that. When I talk about crappies up at Lake of the Woods, these big black crappies, I'm talking 12 all the way up to 17 inches. I mean, we get some 17 inches, which is for a crappie in the Northland, it's a big crappie.
That is a big crappie. It takes a long time to grow them that big up there. It's funny how they have the longevity. Black crappie in the north will live like 15 years, whereas the same one down in Mississippi only lived 5 years. So it's interesting how they've adapted to their climate. And the whole thing about the Northland is things grow big, baby. Things grow big. And
yeah, you gotta have, it is the Northland, but I also think too, it depends on the body of water.
Oh yeah,
there's certain bodies of water that have just that big fish gene pool. Even with walleyes, you can go to a lake in Minnesota and catch a 26-inch walleye, and that's a monster in that lake. Now Lake of the Woods, we get them up 32, 33 inches. And the difference is, I think, number one, you got to have the right gene pool. Number two, it really helps. In fact, I've spoken to the Minnesota DNR about this. It really helps if you want to grow monster pike and monster walleyes to have a good population of tulbies in your body of water. And then, of course, the other thing that helps is having a variety of forage, so that during the off years, if one part of the forage base is off for whatever reason, you got 9 other forage bases that pick up the slack. There's no decline in growth or anything.
Well, this has been a great conversation, Joe. Thank you so much for coming on the show. And actually, folks, we're going to feature Joe next month as well on the November show. But for right now, if you want to get in on this, get on your pony. Where should they go, Joe?
You know what? Hey, our website has all of our resorts, guided fishing, all the information you need. And that is Lake of the Woods, MN for Minnesota, lakeofthewoodsmn.com.
All right. That was Joe Henry, Director of Tourism for Lake of the Woods. Excuse me, Executive Director. And a knowledgeable man and a complete fish nerd, just like the rest of us. Joe, thanks for coming on.
Thanks, John.
Okay, man. Walleye, sauger, pike, muskie, crappie, sturgeon. It's all going on, dude. I can barely sit here. I want to just get in the car and start driving.
I'm in, John. I'm sold on that. You have me at walleye. Never even seen a sauger, so I'm down. I'm down. We can guarantee no fish. I'll bring a grill.
Love it, love it, love it. And if all my dreams come true, I'm going to take you up there ice fishing, and you can make our guide do it all while you actually get to fish. How's that sound?
Oh, I am so down with that, John. It's funny. This year, my plan for guiding this winter is barely any. Oh. I am going to dial everything back and get my time back, and I'm going to fish for fun this winter. And I haven't fished for fun in the winter in a few years, so I'm excited about it.
Well, listeners, you heard it. He said it. He promised, and we're gonna keep after him, make sure he does it that way. So, sounds like a plan. Sounds like a plan. Okay, yeah. We're having too much fun here. I got to move on. Let's do fish in the news.
All right, let's go.
News, fish in the news. Everybody loves their fish in the news.
Okay,
you got some news, John, and I know you got some stories on, but I have one I have to do as well. But I'll let you go first. This big one is so sad. I'm gonna let you lead it.
It is so sad. A few weeks ago, I got a text from Clay, and he got this news to me. It was on October 4th when Clay sent me the text. But our king, my hero, our hero, a guy that really liked this podcast, that would come on this podcast every time he finished a book, has passed away from a heart attack. Our king, John Gierach.
You don't usually get news that makes your heart sink on a celebrity. Usually I'm like, another celebrity died. But John was a friend of the show, and this was a painful one.
It is. It's very painful. He is a true legend now. He has passed into the shadows of legend, and I am going to miss him. I still find myself thinking, I'd love to send this to John Gierach, because after he was on the show, when I got to meet him, I sent him a gar fly. I sent him some micro jigs. I sent him some stuff. I sent him a crazy book because he talks about one of his things about how he likes to read big, thick, non-fishing books when he's stuck in airports. And then he wants books that he doesn't feel like keeping, that he can just leave the paperback sitting there when he leaves the lodge, when he leaves the airport, and let somebody else pick it up. And I still find myself thinking, wow, maybe one day John will come down and we'll do some gar fishing. Because, man, the guy was regular people. I mean, he gave me a cell phone. He gave me his address. He was like, contact me anytime you need to, that kind of a thing. And I was really looking forward to just having him on the show to talk. Like, buddy, you don't need to write a book just to talk with us. We could just come on and let you vent or whatever you want to do. But it's that chapter, that book has reached its conclusion, and rest in peace, John Gierach.
Yeah, sorry to break that news if you haven't heard it already. I guarantee you, though, there'll be more John Gierach books. I bet you he has something in the works that was getting ready to go, and maybe someone will put together and finish it for him.
Well, I certainly hope so. And I'm really kind of, if you know a little bit about his life, I'm kind of worried about this, kind of worried about that, but I know that he's in a place where the fishing is all he wants it to be. And his contribution to fishing in general, but especially fly fishing and especially outdoor writing, he is among the top people and will be remembered for a long, 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 long time. All right. There we have paid tribute to a great man. Shall we move on to a story of environmental? Oh, no, it's your turn. It's your turn. I'm sorry. You go on.
Well, so John, do you know my opinions on circle hooks?
Yes, I do.
My opinion. My opinion hasn't changed, even though I may change your mind, John. So I've said for years, I do not catch many fish on circle hooks. And I also don't buy into the fact that they're any better than other hooks. And some new data comes out of Massachusetts, Division of Marine Fisheries. They reevaluated the conservation benefits of circle hooks for striped bass specifically, but you can draw other conclusions to other fish. So for years, John, and this is from mass.gov, this is a government website. For years, people assumed that when fisheries managers created a rule back in 2020, required anglers to use circle hooks when fishing for bait for striped bass, they assumed that they would have lower rates of gut hooking than regular J hooks, based on studies done in the 1990s. And so they made that rule based on those studies. Those studies were done on older scientific methods that use cages to monitor survivals of these fish for 2 to 3 days after fish were caught. And that style of circle hooks in the 90s does not exist anymore. They're very, very different now than they were then. So the first generation circle hooks were not like today's circle hooks. So a team of biologists got together and conducted a study using modern circle hooks and modern scientific methods to measure the conservation benefits of the striped bass circle hook rule. And so over 2 years, they caught 716 striped bass. These are scientists get to go bass fishing, John. And they caught them with J hooks and then 3 popular circle hook models. And then before they released the fish, they tagged them with electronic transmitters that measured tail beats using an array of river buoys that they monitored their survival for 2 months instead of a couple of days. What do you think they found?
No difference?
No difference, John. No difference. It's all a myth. They found no significant difference in mortality between any of the circle hooks and J hooks. And why do you think that is, John?
Probably because of the way the structure I would say the structure of a striper's mouth.
It has to do with the gap in the circle hooks compared to J hooks. They're not different. Modern circle hooks have a wider gap than the original circle hooks from the 90s. So there's not a very big difference. So the other thing is the earlier studies relied on chunked menhaden and other chunked fish for bait, and these used live mackerel for bait in this hook. And so then the question is, John, they found no difference. There's no different mortality. So do we need a circle hook rule still?
Well, I would say in that case, no, because we're all about science around here. And if it says there's no difference, then why do it?
Well, there's still the rule hasn't changed. They're not making any motion to change the rules. even though there's no difference. And that's again
you
what's
gotta
fishing with
give-
bait.
You got to give, this ain't a video game, bro. This is life. I mean,
Yeah.
we got to.
Well,
There's,
here's
go
the
ahead.
deal. Here's the deal. Is that rule eliminates the use of treble hooks, so they're not changing it. They could just make a rule against treble hooks.
Yeah.
Then we'd all agree that's bad.
Right.
But yeah, but they're not going to change the rules, even though there is no data showing there's any benefit to the circle hooks. So
Well.
now I'm back on my circle hook hating soapbox. I went striped bass fishing with Dave Kellum. Late August, and we were live lining mackerel on circle hooks, and I couldn't land a striped bass to save my life. I got hooked. I mean, they would eat my bait. I could see them in the water, but I couldn't seem to get the hook into any part of their mouth. It would just slide. They'd hold on the bait, ride to the boat, and let go. And yeah, J hook, I would have set that hook and had him.
Well, all I can do is talk about the fish that they work really well on.
Yeah.
Which are sharks in the saltwater
Mm-hmm.
and catfish in the freshwater. A lot of catch and release catfishing going on now. Catfish used to just be a catch it, keep it fish.
Mm-hmm.
Now, these guides like Joe Jellison down in on the NcAngler Lake system, Stephen Douglas, the Ohio River King, these guys will tell you, Luke Nichols, Catfish and Carp, these guys will tell you that yes, the way a catfish takes a bait, the way a catfish eats a bait, the way a catfish's mouth is made, you will get more hookups if you know how to use a circle hook than you will with a J hook. And because Jellison and Stephen Douglas are guides, they want these big 50, 60 pound, 100-pound catfish back in the river so their guides, their clients can catch them. They want them to survive. Therefore, now when I look at a bass, a striper's mouth, it is so different than a catfish's mouth. Catfish's mouth
is giant.
Yeah, it's fleshy. Same with sharks. Sharks have that kind of downward kind of the lower jaw is a lot shorter than the upper jaw and all that kind of stuff. So there's a fleshy connection there, a muscular connection there that it's gristle on a bass. So, and I've used circle hooks for bluegill, and I'm still on the fence about that, but I love them for cat because if I don't feel like cleaning and I'm fishing cat, I mean, when I was a kid, we kept every one because they were all gut hooked. I mean, all of them were gut hooked.
Well, I mean, catfishing that's the game. You let them eat the bait. But it's funny. I've caught the same brown bullhead 5 times in one night. And the way I know it was the same one. I was catching release fishing, but this is back when I was in my 20s, and I'm using snelled hooks on a snap swivel. So every time the fish got gut hooked, I would just cut the line near the lip of the fish and let him go. And so I kept catching the same one. And by the end of the night, he had 5 strings hanging out of his mouth.
Oh gosh, that's too much.
Didn't bother him in the least.
Yeah, well, they are really good about ejecting the hooks. They don't eject them. They kind of digest them, but actually, and for those deeper ones, but the ones in their mouth, they rub up against stuff. I don't know. They figure there's a good study by Berkeley that has been done in tanks. And so it's not definitive by any means, but it showed that of their 100 bass or whatever that they were looking at, all of them but one were able to get rid of that hook within 3 days. Yeah. Most of them, half of them got rid of it in a day. And you know what the hardest one on a bass, like a striper or a black bass, sunfish bass, is? Top of the jaw, side of the jaw, bottom of the jaw, roof of the mouth. Which one's hardest for him to get rid of?
Oh, bottom of the jaw.
You got it. You nailed it. Ding, ding, ding. You got it right. Yeah. For some reason, one in the bottom jaw is
no reason for it. I just made it up.
Yeah. Well,
okay. You said you said that Berkeley study was done in what?
Well, they do extensive testing. They have a huge aquarium system there.
But they did them in you said something specific. They did them in what?
Well, they did them with bass in these tanks.
In what? In what?
Tanks.
You're welcome. I'm sorry.
And that's why he can teach junior high people. All right.
Just got to get it in there, John.
You got to. You can't leave it.
All right. Leave it behind. Move on. What's next?
Let's move on.
Yeah.
All right. Secretary Holland announces removal of Apache trout, Arizona state fish, from the endangered species threatened list due to collaborative. That's how we say it in the Midwest, but a lot of people say collaborative. Due to collaborative conservation efforts, recovery efforts funded by $5.1 million from President Biden's administration, Investing in America agenda, has made it so that the Apache trout, which is, I assume, some sort of, I don't know if it's distinct species or a subspecies of the rainbow. They have a nice picture of it here in this article. We have the link in the show notes, as always, of course. But yeah, they spent a little money. And after 50 years of efforts among federal, state, and tribal and non-governmental organizations, the incredible recovery story of the Apache trout reminds us of the transformational power that collaborative efforts in conservation can make happen. And grounded in indigenous knowledge, and this means First Nation people, we can have fish and wildlife and fish for them and enjoy them, but we can conserve and preserve them as well. So it's a great article. It goes on and on here, but that is the gist of it. It's a success story. And you know how excited I get on these environmental success stories. I love it. Yeah. I love it. And I can't get more excited about it.
Well, it's fun to see science work.
Well, it is fun to see science work, and it's fun to see generational effort work, because we're talking 50 years. So I mean, some of these biologists, some of these people been working on this a long time. People go in and out of office. This is an important thing, that we have a population, a majority that supports this sort of thing, that says, yes, species are important. Just because I don't know what's so big deal about it. Well, you know, you may not see it, but other people can. Don't worry about it. Just support them. Okay. If you do nothing else, don't be against it. You know, let it happen. Let it be. Don't whine about, oh, they didn't let me fish this stream for, X years, or they didn't let me do this or that. They're taking it away. All right. It's like, just cut it out. You don't have a right to drive a species into extinction. We want a population of people that say we want a diverse and thriving environment in this world. And it starts with ordinary people like us saying, yeah, we support this kind of thing. And that's why it can be a recovery, recognize the problem, and so on. So just be patient about your circle hooks, man. You'll get around to it. All right.
I'm going to be okay, John.
All right. Let's move on. And what I got next. Oh, our last story is a good one. It's a good one. And I got this one, from a variety of sources. The link I put in is the news center, the NBC News Center, Maine Outdoor News. Maine expands lead fishing tackle ban, aims to protect loons. New law bans a certain size and weight of lead tackles on inland bodies of water. Okay, that's old news if you follow this podcast at all. Maine has banned lead for a long time, but the crazy thing is they had this exception for painted.
Well, let me tell my story. Yeah, this happened to me. So I was fishing in Greenville, Maine, up on Moosehead Lake, and I stopped into a tackle shop there to get jig heads, and they had tons of different colored jig heads. And I said to the shop owner, who was a guide, by the way, I said, what is this? Do you have lead jig heads? And the guy laughed at me and goes, you could fish with these. They're painted. And I said, but I don't see a difference. He goes, there's no law, so just go fishing. And I'm like, but there's no difference. Like, I'm not going to fish with lead in your lake. And he thought I was stupid and some bleeding heart liberal and all this other stuff. And it turns out in Maine at the time, you couldn't fish lead jigs unless they were painted. And of course, anyone fishing painted jigs know as soon as they hit a rock or a fish bites it, some of that paint comes off, and there's no point in painting them anyway. So, yeah. Right. So now the law changed, John?
The law has changed. Changed. For the past decades, various legislation has addressed lead fishing tackle in Maine, and the law has now been expanded on previous efforts.
Good.
As of September 1st, the sale of painted lead sinkers and painted jig heads that are 2.5 inches long or smaller and weigh less than an ounce are prohibited.
Good.
And I love this article because it quotes this speaking of left-wing radical. No, it quotes this intelligent young lady that says, once they pick up that piece of lead and it's in their gizzard, as they're digesting food, they're just going to grind that chunk of lead and it's slowly going to leach out into their body, said Maine Audubon wildlife biologist Laura Williams. It most typically results in death, and that takes about 2 to 4 weeks. So these fish are sick. I mean, these loons are the loons are sick. The other birds are sick. A slow and agonizing death, and paint will not stop this from happening. It's ridiculous. Pete Mormoras of Saco Bay Tackle says that while anglers need to learn to adapt to the new regulations, there's a gray area. People are confused. Let me quote him exactly. The confusing part about it is that you can still use lead in salt water, whereas you cannot use it in fresh water. I think getting a more detailed description on what they need to do won't be as vague as in the past. So he's got kind of a common sense thing. He's neither for or against, but he doesn't, as for me and you, we're against putting lead in everywhere, everywhere, because outside of killing loons and other birds and some other wildlife, I think it's dumb just to dump a toxin in the water when you could do something else. But
right.
Maybe I'll call Pete up and talk to him about it. But
sure. The thing about it, John, is like people, there's a lot of people who are up in arms about this, and they'll be like, now I got to go buy new lures, and it's not fair. That's the government trying to make me buy new lures. But they complain about not wanting to buy new lures. But you know what they love doing? Buying new lures.
That's exactly right.
They don't care.
That's exactly right.
It's not about the money.
No, and it's not about the fact that, wow, you're sitting over there with an X $1,000 boat. You got a $300 rod with a $250 reel on it. You run out and buy tungsten because some Bass Pro says it's what you got to use, and that's the most expensive weight of all, and so on and so forth. So don't tell me that paying $1.10 instead of $1 for something, or paying $11 instead of $10 for something because it's a 10%, 20%, whatever rise on the price because lead-free materials are a bit more expensive. Although Glasswater is really, pays attention to price, and we're willing to just make a little less money. We want to meet you in the middle and so forth like that. But lead-free fishing is the right thing to do. This is just the feeling of, hey, we're being pushed around. Well, Clay, I don't want to keep going on this because guess what? Guess who I have on the show next?
You have Laura Williams from Maine Audubon.
Yeah, and I don't want to steal her thunder.
I
don't want to steal her thunder. She's going to tell us all about it in detail. Take us on out of Fishing the News, bro.
Hit the button.
News, fish in the news. Everybody loves their fish in the news.
Oh, everybody loves Fish in the News. Now, let's listen to one of our favorite regular guests, Laura Williams of the Maine Audubon Society. All right, we have a special guest in the studio this morning, a regular here on the Fish Nerds. I hate to say, but I kind of stole her thunder a little bit because I gave a little teaser out in the Fish in the News, Laura, but here she is, our friend biologist, Laura Williams with the Maine Audubon Society, and she has some news, some specific news, some news in detail about how the lead-free fishing movement's been advanced in Maine by getting rid of a law that kind of bugged the living stuffings out of me. It was a real, burr in my underpants, this exception for painted jigs, but you all turned that around. Tell us about it.
Yeah, so just past this session, we were able to close that loophole on painted jigs. And they passed that in small sizes, you can no longer use painted jigs in Maine because, as we all know, that paint doesn't do anything to protect the loons at all whatsoever. It just chips right off. And the way this works is it's a slow rollout. We like to give people time to get used to the change. So as of September 1st this year, stores are no longer able to sell that small size painted lead jig heads. And then starting September 1st, 2026, we'll no longer be able to use them in our main lakes and streams.
Well, that is fantastic. That is fantastic because, I'm all in favor of compromise where it makes sense. But this, of course, made no sense to a bird biologist such as yourself, and even people that, know about birds at all, whether it's on a farm or out in the wild. Birds have a gizzard and they gather grit, whether it's little rocks or sand or this or shells or this or that, but they use it to help grind up their food. And that just takes the paint right off those things. That paint isn't Pepto-Bismol. It doesn't coat your stomach and help anything. It doesn't prevent, the degradation. It doesn't prevent the digestion. And it's just one of those things that I'm like, how in the world did they come up with this? But then again, I've heard the saying that a camel is a pony designed by a political committee. And so sometimes what you want isn't what you get, but at least you take what you can get. But tell me about how this advocacy works, because Glasswater is on kind of a different wavelength in that we're more into the education and making these products available and hoping people will make the switch on their own. But legislation had to become involved both in the Northeast and in the Northwest, in that you were hitting a critical area with the loons. And when Massachusetts started it all off, the results were immediate and profound. And so all of the people with the biologists and the bird groups and the people just that had the sense God gave a common rock said, yeah, we need to do something. And the results really are profound. And we've done this on other shows. We're not going into that. What I want to hear about, because we have a lot of people that want to do actionable things and want to, test the waters with the advocacy on fishing issues of all kinds. Describe to us that process. Who helped who? Where were your allies? Tell us all about it.
Yeah. So Maine Audubon, we have a whole advocacy department, and our director of advocacy is wonderful. She's during the session, she is up at the State House from sun up to sundown, talking to everyone she can.
Well, let's and shout her out. Shout her out.
Francesca Gundrum.
All right, Francesca's up at the State House, putting it on them. Yeah,
she's absolutely wonderful, and she puts in so much time and effort during the session and works on so many environmental bills that we're passionate about here in Maine. So a big part of that is she'll actually loop in other environmental organizations, Maine Lakes, Lake Environmental Association, lots of different partners. And then we'll also at some point pull in our loon count volunteers. So Maine Audubon has been doing the loon count throughout the state of Maine for over 40 years. So we have thousands of people that love their loons, love the work that we do. And so we'll call them in and get them to write statements and testify and say why this is so important, and tell those stories of them saying, oh, our great male that's been breeding here for 10 years, we lost to lead poisoning, and it was devastating to watch. And that really helps carry this weight in the State House. And yeah, that's kind of how it goes. And then you cross your fingers a little bit and hope that everyone makes the right decision for the environment.
Well, hats off to the Maine legislature for making the right decision in this case, because you're really kind of gutting a large part of your effort when you have a crazy exception like that is not based on any sound science. Now, I don't like to get snarky and all that, but because it's apparent to people that like us, but maybe to others it's not. Maybe there is this idea, and of course, you always sense that maybe the tackle business been doing a little fibbing there, a little hedging, a little tilting it toward their perspective. But when you can't bring any data to support the idea that paint is in any way protecting anyone from lead, and we know that. So anyway, I'm glad we got it cleared up, and thank you to Francesca rallying the forces, and of course you and your organization and everything else. We've got that cleared up, and we're going to save a lot more loons in Maine. All right, now, fill us in, because some of us are on pins and needles about the plovers. How did they do this year?
Oh, the plovers in Maine, they did absolutely great this year. We had a lot of late winter storm damage that everyone was pretty worried about. Our coastline really got beat up. We lost a lot of dunes. There was a lot of property damage. And everyone was a little worried. What does that mean for the plovers? But they've been around. They've seen this happen before, and they all still showed right up and nested. We didn't break our record of breeding pairs, but we still had a really high number. We had 143 breeding pairs in the state, and we were able to fledge 237 chicks. And so those chicks, they'll migrate south for the winter time, and then they'll come back up next spring and the following spring, and ideally help us build our breeding population even more.
Well, let's hope so. I'm sure it'll be the case for the new listeners and the listeners that haven't listened to us talk to Laura Williams before. She is a wildlife biologist for the Maine Audubon Society, and besides spearheading their lead-free education program, her big job in the summertime is helping the piping plover of Maine, protecting them, making sure they get a chance to reproduce unmolested. And it really is fascinating when you look at a map, because you'll see the range of the piping plover, and then you'll see this kind of northeastern limit just kind of creeps right up along the Maine coastline. And you and Maine Audubon are in large part responsible for that. And I just feel pretty cool and important and kind of warm and fuzzy knowing you, because I love an outdoor success story. Of course, we focus on fishing in this podcast, but I'm happy to hear about fishing adjacent things, because most fishers they're into wildlife. They kind of watch the birds. They kind of like, they see the whole system and how we need every part of the Jenga. We can't pull them out willy-nilly, if at all, because we want to keep that tower strong, and we want to keep our environment clean and diverse as it was meant to be. All right. Well, listen, I want to talk a little bit about our project, if you don't mind. If you got a little more time, let's do that. All right. This is a project that Laura and I are working on. I don't know, if there's ever, I would say, I don't know when it's going to be done. It's probably not going to be done. It seems to be one of those, we're getting ourselves into an open-ended thing that probably won't be done, before I'm done. But we're trying to get a head start on things, and we're looking at a couple of things on the public side, which is going to be kind of Laura's zone. We're looking at organizing the orgs. You talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. So just getting other organizations that are focused on the same type of work that we're doing. I mean, Maine isn't the only state that used to use lead fishing tackle. There's a lot of states that have things in place, but other states, they don't. And they still have loon populations. They have other migratory birds that eat fish similar to loons, and they're also affected by this lead tackle issue. So being able to kind of get a group together and get everyone on the same page and do something similar to what we're doing here in Maine would just help the effort countrywide, instead of just looking at the individual state by state.
Yes. And what we decided we kind of need to do, and then believe me, this is just in the discussion stage right now. So if this seems a little bare bones, folks, it's because it is. But what eventually we want to do is, it's going to be Maine Audubon, man, maybe Trout Unlimited organization. And then there's the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency, who, like Maine Audubon Society, has an extensive list of lead-free tackle manufacturers and retailers. So instead of having competing lists, we'll combine the lists, and we'll cooperate in that way and try to bring orgs together so that everybody has access to a database of information. My eventual dream is that we're going to have the lead-free fishing, or the, get the lead out type of organization where we can have, conferences and things like that. The exciting news that I bring to this equation is that as a business person, I've got lead-free fishers everywhere. I've got a little map up here in my office that pretty much has a check mark on every single state. I'm not sure, maybe Alaska's not on there yet, but I think I've got a lead-free fishing customer in every state, and lots of them in places where you wouldn't think they'd be, such as I've got tons in North Carolina, got several customers in Alabama, got some customers in Mississippi, have a whole load of customers in Texas. And, then the obvious suspects, California, Minnesota, Michigan, Wisconsin, places where there are a lot of loons. But hey, folks down in Texas, hey, we've got a lot of shorebirds. We got avocets, we got ducks and geese. Michigan, hey, we got swans in addition to the loons that can fall afoul of this lead thing. So it's not, the loon is the poster baby, and we love it because they're cool as heck. But this issue affects everything. Our national symbol runs afoul of lead, and that is undisputable. And it's not just from eating carcasses from hunting. A lot of fish get gut hooked, and then that sinker's in there, and then the eagle eats the fish, and then they get lead poisoning too. So ultimately, we know that lead's just a really toxic thing. It's really not necessary to the sport, because there's no magical quality to lead. I mean, things we got bismuth that's has a specific gravity that's almost the same. I mean, very close to lead. But the thing is that, some of these materials are a little more expensive, et cetera, but the lead's just in there because it's cheap, available, and craft. And the problem with, of course, lead is that when you fish, you're concentrating it in a natural wild place. And there's all kinds of people standing up all over this great country of ours saying, hey, this ain't a good thing. So
I was going to say, there's actually new studies are showing that the lead poisoning that we're seeing in these deceased loons actually increases during higher angler activity. So during July and August in Maine, that's when we're seeing more and more lead mortalities in loons. So it is pretty directly related to active fishing. And so this new painted jig thing, I mean, it's really, this is going to help. This should drop those numbers and
it should
and really do the work.
I think so. I think it's going to be huge. I think it's going to be absolutely huge. And we really have to watch what we're doing when we regulate lead, because it is important. I mean, lead fishing lures can cause an entire species to disappear from an area. One of the groups I support is the Beaton Lake Riparian Association. And Beaton Lake happens to be in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. And this is just some people that live around this lake, and they don't want to see swans and loons disappear from their lake. They don't want them gone from that lake. And they're in the right place with that. And they love fishing and they want to fish. And then so they formed a little group to inform the residents and the people that visit that, hey, we're going to be lead free in this lake. It's not by legislation. We're just asking you to fish lead free here. And Glasswater sent them some stuff to help them out with that. And, they're on board. They're on board. So I can't wait till we have all the organizations that would support this, would be interested in this, integrated and working together. I mean, it doesn't matter if they're big, they're huge, they're small, they're medium. It really doesn't matter if they're concentrating on one body of water or several bodies of water or an entire area. It really doesn't matter. But the whole idea of our plan is to organize the orgs and get them to come together and get them to share data. I mean,
yes.
There's got to be
I
data.
should have known that.
Because we not only will the ordinary person and the average person come along and get on board with this, but there's going to be a lot more biologists and people, that can say, hey, you know what? Guess what? We may not have lead mortality specific stuff like the states in the Northwest or East, but we can say that, for example, we find more swan mortality in the summer. There wasn't any hunting going on in July. Why is this the way it is? And so I'm really excited. I'm really excited about it. I'm thinking, though, we've got a lot of work to do.
Oh, absolutely. There's always more work to do. I mean, when you talk about the law, when you talk about lead-free fishing, when you talk about the education side, I mean, the job's never done, and the more people that we have on board to support this and to get that messaging out, the better.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm also talking about things like filling in a spreadsheet, which I would rather try to shave with a cheese grater while chewing on tinfoil than fill in a spreadsheet. But there's some people that know how to do it quick. They know how to do it right. And we need some more talent in and, around this issue that can contribute, and we'll get where we want to go a lot faster. On the biz side, what are you hoping you get out of your lead-free company?
I just want to see all sorts of tackle. That's one of the hardest things to get people on board, is they're like, well, I don't want to fish lead-free because I can't find this specific size and make and lure item that I can find in lead. And so having that variety and that diversity, I think that's the biggest part to get people on board with this, is still being able to fish with the same lures you grew up fishing with and how to fish with, but it's just made with a different material.
Exactly. Because right now, I think the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency had a thing out that they're up to 150 companies on their list, but most of them, even the most successful ones, like Beco Jigs is one that we point to a lot. But they sell bass jigs. That's all they sell. That's what they do. The vast majority of these companies only make one or two things, or they make one small category of things. They might make weights of a certain kind. They don't make like all the different types of weights. So a more comprehensive approach when it comes to marketing, when it comes to business, and also the same level of coordination between companies that we're expecting between the organizations would help. We need to support one another. And we have to find some way to get these products together, because it's a really big ask on the part of tackle companies to say, sorry, but we don't carry that. You're going to have to go 5 different places, 10 different places, 24 different places, just to get your tackle box filled up with lead-free stuff. So some sort of clearinghouse, some sort of cooperation. I have a lot of business model ideas on this. I'm not going to go into them all here because we got to keep this within a time limit. But we're working on that business side too, and it's about integration and cooperation. Here's another thing I say in my talks is that if we make it available, affordable, and effective, then we're going to get the changeover. Probably my guess, if the Teddy Roosevelt Conservancy surveys are anything to be looked at, we will get a 90-some% conversion just out of people just because they know it's the right thing to do. The effectiveness, I don't think, is as hard a part as the availability. I think what you're talking about there is your final frontier, so to speak, is to get these things in stores. And once again, we're going to need some people that know, about tackle distribution and tackle marketing and some ideas like that. So, but I think it's going to be a case of one hand washes the other. Do you agree? I mean, if we get the public side going or the market side going, they'll help each other.
Yeah. The more you market something, the more people are interested in it. The more you tell people about it, more people are interested. So it'll snowball effect. I see it building and growing and building and rethinking it and reworking it as we go and just being fluid with it.
Well, it's true. And when the public side, when organizations like yours educate and encourage and organize, then that only raises the overall awareness. And it also lets non-anglers who are supportive of anglers get into the picture. Well, Laura, I don't want to go on and on. Is there anything else? Look, 2 minutes. What you been catching? What you been doing? You live right on a lake. You're living the life. You have a beautiful little, what they call a camp. No, her and Jamie, she and Jamie, I guess. I don't know. Are the grammar police going to come for me? Probably. But so let's make this fast. But what's biting out at Malsom Lake?
I've been doing a lot of bass fishing. I love bass fishing. It's pretty, interactive, and I'm a sucker for a wacky worm. I'll try everything. I'm using my glass water tackle out there, trying this, trying that. And then typically at some point I'll say, I'll throw on a wacky worm. And sure enough, usually get a big largemouth or smallmouth, and they're always fun to play in.
Yeah, that's great. But I'll tell you what, this is crazy. It's going to seem crazy, but in 59 years of fishing, I just started using a wacky worm rig a couple weeks ago, because while I was visiting my daughter in Massachusetts, my buddy crappie stopper Kim Burnett was out at my pond using a wacky rig, and he had amazing luck. Caught 2 or 3 5-pounders and a couple of 4s. But anyway, the big bass are hard to come by in my pond because they're pretty educated. And somehow, he got them to bite. I was looking for a way I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do a shout out to one of my favorite companies, Z-Man, because this is another area, plastics. And when we get our ball rolling, we are going to have a comprehensive approach as to no lead, safer plastics, better ideas for doing this or that. And, PFAS, we're starting to look at outdoor gear and wear. And so it could really be a good thing to centralize a lot of this information. And we've got the people that can do it. We just got to get them organized and together. But I watched this Bass Pro. He said, yeah, he loves the Z-Man, and he just takes a ordinary 16th or 8th ounce jig head, and you don't have to use the ring. You don't have to get the tool. You don't have to do nothing. So you want to use some glass water jig heads, and I know you got plenty. Get yourself some Z-Man. Get yourself some Elastec, or you can get yourself some Lunker Hunt. Lunker Hunt's a Canadian company. It's right there. Lunker Hunt puts out a lot of stuff in the TPE plastic, which is the name for it. Everybody brands it with a name of some sort. And but you're looking for a TPE based plastic. Elastomer plastic is another way to talk it, and that's why it's called Elastec. But yeah, I take a nice long TRD, one of their TRD sticks, or any of they've got some big fat worms now that are really fun to use, and you double hook it, you run that point through, and then you kind of roll the worm just a little bit and run it through again, so it really cradles down in that hook bend, and that way you got the hook bend and the point going 90 degrees to your worm, instead of with the ring, the hook point and the bend is running parallel, is running parallel with it. So a lot of guys argue that that's, better. And that jig, because you got it with a TPE, it'll float, see? So it's not going to just sink on its own. Weight. Yeah. And so you can put your little glass water jig head on there. And the reason you can do that is because the Lastech or any other TPE elastomer style plastic is way, way tougher than plastisol. So you don't need the ring, you don't need the setup, because you can just hook it on and it'll stay on. And believe me, I've been using the same Z-Man worm for about a half a dozen trips to the pond now. I've caught about 20, smaller bass on it, biggest one about 2.5, but having a ball with it, it's staying on there. All right, so there's your fishing tip of the day. Like most unasked for advice, it's worth what you pay for it, but I'm still going to get it's free. Why not? No, give it a try, because I've been having just as much luck as Crappie Stopper with my rig. We haven't caught a hog, but neither has he the last 2 times he came out. And I said, I warn you, these fish educate. I warn you what's going on here.
Yeah, well, and that's why it's nice to have the variety. As your fish get smart, you throw something else at them and hope you can switch it up a little bit.
Absolutely. Laura, thank you for coming in this morning, taking time out of your schedule to fill us in on the exciting stuff that's going on in Maine. And thank you for agreeing to partner with me in Glasswater Angling. The idea we have that is, ambitious as heck, but as we get more people in on it, it'll probably not be quite as steep a hill to climb, and we'll start seeing the benefits right away. This has been Crappie Hippie and Laura Williams from the Maine Audubon Society, talking about getting rid of the painted jig exception and excited about it, and talking about some ideas for organizing the lead-free movement in the future.
Yeah, it was great. Thanks for having me today.
All right. Can't you just see why we love hanging with Laura? I mean, really. Smart, cool, active, common sense, heck of a fisher, fun stuff.
I got to make it over and meet her sometime. She's not that far from me. I got to get over and make friends.
Well, it's hard to catch up with her because she's doing stuff all the time, just like you are. But yeah. I mean, she's always like, the door's open. She would let us. I mean, it's their house, but I guess they're called camps when they're on a lake like that.
I'd like to go over there and record her in person and do some stuff with her and get some real field recording with her. I think it'd be really great.
Do it. She'd be open to that at any time.
Yeah, I'll reach out. John, it's time for a beer break. I'm gonna grab a beer.
Okay, me too.
I'll be right back. I'm back.
You are back, and what did you?
I did not get
there?
beer. I got Jack and Coke.
Oh my goodness, you're up there in craft brew heaven, but you grab a Jack and Coke. Okay.
I gotta be honest, John, as I get older, beer agrees with me less and less.
Oh, I don't even want to go there. I mean, yeah, there's certain ones like Bud Light, which I
won't drink it.
I went up and did a favor for my neighbor last night, and we cut up some stuff, and I helped him get some firewood in, and then he pulls out a 20 for everybody to kill. And there's something about that stuff I don't know. But right now, I'm with a mass-produced Aldi brand, air quotes, craft beer called Wernesgrüner. So at least mine has a real German name on it.
Now, you know what they say about beer like Bud Light and all that, right? It's like having sex in a canoe, fucking close to water.
You're gonna make me beep that. You
don't have to beep anything on this. It's not.
I know Rosie's listening, though. I may do it.
She's not listening.
All right, whatever. All right, that concludes part 1 of this podcast. No, get ready, everyone. It is time for the Halloween section of our show. Oh. scary fish, Clay. Scary fish. Feel free to chime in. I put this list together with the help of our listeners who are in the Fish Nerds Facebook group. We run a poll on Fridays, the Fish Nerds fishing poll, and I asked them, what about scary fish? What fish do you find scary? And one of the ones was zombie salmon.
Oh, yes,
what
they
is zombie
are frightening.
salmon? Zombie salmon.
Frightening.
Yeah.
They're
You
so
know what
scary.
I'm talking about.
I do.
Tell the listeners what's a zombie salmon.
It's a fish a salmon that's on its run. It's about to die, and its skin is like rotting off its body. It's sloughing off, and they're still angry and full of hormones. So they'll bite hooks, but they are frightening fish.
They are. I mean, it's very much like Frankenstein. You know how we all have a little thread of sympathy for Frankenstein? I mean, I think that's the basis for the whole movie, Young Frankenstein, the best, one of the best comedies ever made, because we feel a little sorry for the dude. He didn't want to be created, you know, and everybody is scared of him and hates him. And when you see these videos, and I put one in, Peter Herman's Adventures has a video, you're kind of heartbroken, but of course, you know, it's part of life, part of the cycle. But when you see a fish swimming around and its eyes have fallen out, all right, that's a scary freaking fish. And you feel sorry for it, but you're like, that's scary. And
why won't you just die?
Yeah, it's like, why do they do that? You know, the skin is covered with mold and growth and this and that. And yeah, they are catchable. And some of them fight hard, some of them don't. But when a guy holds one up with a big old grin on his face, I find that disquieting. I find it disquieting.
Yes. Well, they're not only are they rotting away, their body is digesting itself.
Exactly.
Energy. And so it's not really rotting so much as just eating. It's just consuming itself. Most zombies feed on brains.
Yeah.
These guys feed on themselves.
And one of the first things to go is that protective coating on the outside, and everything just starts jumping on them. So mold and microorganisms are eating them from without, and they are eating themselves from within. So if that is not a Halloween thing,
oh, but John, you know that salmon sex must be the best sex. Because if they're willing to go through that level of pain just to reproduce, it must be amazing.
Well, you certainly hope so.
They can do it one time, and they're like, yeah, but worth it. Oh, they're dead.
Just like mayflies and so on, right?
So many animals, yeah. They just do it one time, but it must be the best time.
It gotta be.
Yes, you can. Yes, you can eat my head off while we do it. Let's go.
Oh God! I can't. Go ahead and eat my head off.
That was a praying mantis joke.
Yeah, Black Widow, all those, yeah. Okay. Oh, dude, isn't nature wonderful?
It's scary. Nature is a frightening thing, John.
It really,
I don't know why I go outside.
Oh, you're ready to move to the city? All right. Clay, you know what a Candiro is?
I do. You know, a few years ago, maybe 10 years ago, we did a special similar to this one, and this fish came up as one of the scariest fish in the world.
Yeah. And listeners, a Candiro is a little fish. Some of them get get bigger, like 3, 4, 5 inches, but a lot of the species are about an inch long. They're super skinny. And the legend is if you're peeing in the water, a Candiro will follow that urine stream and swim right up your urethra.
Right.
Man
and they're
or
parasites, John. They're parasites.
They're parasites.
And they've got barbs on them, so you can't pull them out.
Yes, they will.
So the legend says.
They will not back out. However, why am I saying legend?
Because it hasn't happened.
It has not been confirmed. It is a
way
classic.
To suck the joy out of my stories.
Yeah. But it has a happy ending, Clay, because the only confirmation of a Candiro in a man's urethra was removed surgically in 1997 down in South America. I can't remember which country specifically, but the circumstances of how it got in his urethra were suspect.
Well, because look, John, guys are a bunch of weirdos. So it's not crazy to think he might have done it himself.
Hey, have we
to
done?
See.
Have we done stories about people sticking fish? You know where? Yeah.
We have. We should roll back to it. Valentine's Day is around the corner, so we look forward to that. We'll do a whole. Let's do that, John. Let's do a whole episode of sexy fish.
That's sexy, huh? Maybe I've heard. Look, I'm not fringe, baby. I am not fringe. I am straight down the middle.
I'm not judging.
I'm not judging. Man. I'm positive. I'm sex positive, but baby, I can't even. 43 years with the same woman and I have still not figured it all the way out. So I ain't ready to diversify. I ain't ready to go to.
No. I'm not saying you have to do anything. We're going to find stories about crazy people who
know that.
That's all. Yeah.
All right.
We're not testers. we're not doing real science, John.
No, we're not testers. We're
I'm doing this, but for science. Where's my kangaroo?
Got to get a permit. Okay, Clay, did you ever have a scary fish that just scared the living hell out of you when you were a kid?
Mm-hmm.
Tell me about it.
I was living in San Francisco on an island called Treasure Island. And I was fishing for a perch. We don't know as a kid, you don't know fish names. So we called this fish a piling perch. And as an adult, I'm pretty sure it was a, what are those just black and white striped fish that eat shrimp? The teeth, people teeth on them. My brain just dropped the name of the fish. But anyway, I called them, everyone's yelling at their podcast right now. I called it a piling perch because it was scraping meat off the pilings, scraping barnacles off the pilings. And I caught it, and it was beautiful. I was happy. It was big. And then these giant arthropods that looked like earwigs and came crawling out of their gills. All these parasites all over them. Scared the bejesus out of me. And they got on my hand, and I threw the fish back. Didn't eat them. So, yeah. Scared me.
Well, that sounds like 100% trauma.
Mm-hmm.
And the one that got me going was the stonefish.
Oh,
and
yeah, they're scary.
It has a lot of names. And of course, I'm looking through just a Time Life book. Back in the day, those were on TV.
Mm-hmm.
Buy a series of Time Life books about war or about this or about that or how to cook or whatever. They had them on all kinds of topics, including nature. And of course, wanting to sell books, they had a lot of sensational nature going on. And when I saw a picture of this fish and how poisonous this fish was, it is the most, and poisonous is wrong. Venomous is the correct word. The most venomous fish of all. And I've got the little Wikipedia general article in there for you where you can find out about these fish. I've also got an article from Surfer Today that talks about how you treat yourself when you step on one.
Do you pee on it? You put vinegar on it if you have it. I don't know if, but in fact, how do you put together a little kit? So if you're surfing where these things may happen, because sometimes they'll crawl up on the sand or get left up on the sand when the tide goes out. So even if you're not out surfing in the water, you're just running to shore with your board or whatever, especially if you're doing an evening surf. You missed something, John.
What'd I miss?
Anytime anyone says, do you pee on it? The answer is always, yeah, I pee on it. I'm going to help you out. Just go for it. It doesn't matter if it works. You just tell me to pee on it.
You'll be distracted. I
once peed. So when I lived in New Jersey, we used to play in the waves in Wildwood when I was in high school. And there was a lot of tourists always in Wildwood. And we called the tourists shoobies. SHOOBIES. And one of the things we like to do is make sure the shoobies got stung by jellyfish. So these huge jellyfish would come floating by the waves, be able to swim in the waves. And we put our hands on top of the jellyfish and flip them over. And then we chuck them into the waves where all the shoobies were belly surfing, body surfing. And the tentacles would break up and they'd all get jellyfish stings. Of course, we got stung like crazy ourselves doing it because you're touching jellyfish, but worth it because, you're teenagers and stupid. And asked me if I peed on it.
Did you pee on him?
Yeah. Asked me if it worked.
Did it work?
I don't know. It's hard to know if it would have felt better or worse because I never tried not peeing on it. I just assumed that's what you did. If you get stung, you get bit by a venomous snake, you pee on it. It's a rattler. I'm gonna pee on it.
Yeah, so much, you know.
Yeah. Oh, I got burned. I got burned in the campfire. You pee on it.
Yeah,
That's all you do.
Hey, like Grandma always told us, them folk cures is the best.
Yep, just pee on it.
Oh my gosh! Well, we've kind of expanded beyond my childhood trauma because, of course, I'm 7 years old, learning to read, looking at the picture, mostly reading captions, and thinking I might step one of these out at Pomona or some other lake, and figuring out, oh, they're just in the salt water. But the very idea of them freaked me out. And I think the description was, they're deadly and so on.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like getting bit by a sea snake, which gives you about 11 seconds before you've had it.
Not if you pee on it. John, do you have John, do you have venomous fish in Kansas?
Well, mildly so, yeah.
Well, like what?
Catfish.
Yeah, what kind?
Channel cat, blue cat,
No,
flathead cat.
They're not venomous.
They're not, those spines aren't venomous.
No, they've got bacteria and stuff. They hurt.
Oh, okay. And also the scales are kind of rough on them. That really
right. No, there are venomous catfish around.
Okay.
We have in New Hampshire the margin mad tom.
We've got mad toms, maybe there.
So you might have some mad toms there that have actual venom in their dorsal and pectoral fins, but most of those catfish, other ones you mentioned, do not have venom.
No venom.
But their slime
just feels that way.
The slime hurts when you get penetrated by that. That slime can cause infection, all kinds of other stuff, but it's not venom. But there are some catfish that do have them. So if you have mad toms, I know specifically the margin mad tom. I don't know the rest of the mad toms.
Well, we do.
And I met one once. I've caught several. We ate. Dave Kelman and I ate a margin mad tom.
Yeah.
And it didn't seem that angry. It wasn't that mad. It seemed okay.
Well, you came across a fish who's had therapy, and
we made margin mad tom mousse.
Okay. Wow. I should have. I thought about doing a fish's food angle for this one, but
there it is.
I let it go, but I probably should have pursued it. I mean, not as food, but as dessert for this one. I think I dropped the ball. I think
next time, John. There's more shows. This is only number 345. There we have hundreds of more shows in us.
That is for sure. Anyway, other entries in the scary fish thing, we had the Kraken, which I said is absolutely fishing adjacent. I know it's a giant cephalopod, but it's from Scandinavian mythology, and that's another one I saw a picture of in the same set of Time Life books, and nearly peed myself. And then, of course,
well, because that helps.
It does help. It does, and
it makes everything better.
It really does. It does. Even it's worth the aftermath. The anglerfish, which we know does scary stuff. Not only is it scary, but the female anglerfish absorbs her partner into her body, like something out of mythology. Wow.
Well, and that's where the male becomes a gonad. He just bites her and becomes fused with her. So it is a nightmare.
And you talk about a shark.
But the good news.
Go ahead.
The good news, John, if the bite causes an infection, all she has to do is pee on it.
Okay,
I'm not going to end this joke.
I know. I can see that this thread's gonna run through the whole thing.
Yeah, it's over now.
Another one that I think gets a bad rap just because it's a fish only a mother could love is your goblin shark, and they are like somebody made them up. Right. Truth is stranger than fiction. Awesome animal. We protect these. Even we want to protect all the animals, whether they're cute and cuddly or goblin sharks. And but wow, what a cool looking thing. And I may have to change my James Bond villain submarine to a goblin shark submarine.
That's a solid choice.
Solid choice.
Yeah.
But you know what my favorite one is? Steve NcAngler.
Yep. NC means
no, I didn't say he's a fish.
Yeah.
He says the scariest fish is the one you hooked but never saw. So you can pretty much say it was anything.
That's
you agree? True?
Yeah.
Okay, true.
True.
True. All right.
John, I was talking to a dude who was fishing for smelt, and I asked him the scariest thing to ever happen when fishing. And he was on a tidal river smelting, and it was like 2 a.m, dead quiet. He's drunk, and a harbor seal popped his head through the ice fishing hole, and he said he about came out of his pants. Like, so, that's scary.
That would be scary. And
Yep.
it's a beautiful segue into our next segment,
Let's go.
spooky fishing stories. All right, I put this one up on the Fish Nerds Friday fishing poll, and 62% of respondents have had a weird or spooky incident on the water. 25% said they had an incident that started scary but turned out to be something ordinary. Do you have a story for either thing like that?
You think I would.
I would think you would. Yeah.
I probably do, but you caught me off guard, John, and I drank this Jack Daniels very fast.
Yes, you did.
Yeah.
And all right, I won't hold you to it, but I'll tell you mine. Okay. I was out camping with my two of my best friends and a couple other guys. We were in junior high. We were camping at a pond that we love to camp and fish at, and we're sitting there, we're chatting. All of a sudden, we hear leaves crackling.
Mm-hmm.
We hear leaves crackling, and one of the reasons that Andy, my best buddy, God rest his soul, he was there because his older brother was having friends over, and they were old enough. They were high school. They were, able to drive and this and that. And we kept hearing this. And I was like, do you hear that, man? And it's like, pretty soon, it's like, yeah. Everybody's like, quiet, listen. Crackle, 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 crackle. Something's moving through the woods. And I'm like, you think your brother and his friends are going to come out here and hassle us? He's like, no way, man. He's not allowed to, drive after dark or whatever. It was like, it's not them. I mean, what if it is just a bunch of other punks out here that are going to do some heinous stuff to us, whatever.
Heinous punks.
Yeah. Or what if it's the Momo or this or that? So we keep hearing crackle, crackle. Anyway, we're getting all worked up. We all dig into our kits, pull out our fillet knives. We're all sitting there. We're ready to fight or die. And then Casey, who had more common sense than the rest of us put together, he grabs a flashlight, goes off into the woods because he had, nads that clack together. And he comes back with a box turtle. Back with a box turtle. Which is a little box turtle creeping along. He creep along, stop, creep along, stop. So I know these things can get away from you, but we have some really, really good stories, and they're kind of mysterious. And I'd like to start with this one from Chris Snodgrass, who is a dedicated Fish Nerds Facebook member and tunes into the Friday fishing poll every week. And let's hear from Chris. He's from Montana. My wife, Nicole, and I were trolling for kokanee salmon. It was just before dark, and we had the only boat on the water. It was on a small reservoir in Montana. The water was like glass, so it was just, calm, dead calm. And as we got clear out in the middle, the water swirled next to the boat like a whale turned around right next to us. I mean, the swirl was as big or bigger than their boat, which I assume was a 14, 16-foot boat. It was so creepy that we just immediately headed to the dock. Still not sure what that swirl was. May have been an underwater spring, but it was over 50 foot of water.
It was Loch Ness.
It was something. I have no idea.
Yeah, that's a spooky thing. I've had weird stuff like that in the water happen, and you don't know what's going on. I think there's things we just don't know about.
Absolutely.
All right, can I do the next one?
Please.
This is Alan.
Dumitrescu.
Screw you, Alan, and your hard to say last name.
Now.
I think having a hard to spell last name is selfish.
Well,
So,
the Dumitrescus are
Dumitrescu
is kind of fun to say. You got to say it with the accent.
Dumitrescu. I think it's selfish. He says, I'm the only person at this lake. The sound of a rod wishing through the air on a hard cast. Yeah, that sound happens in the wooded area behind me just once, like a cast. Only similar sounds I've ever heard is bigger birds' wings. I looked, no birds anywhere, no turkeys roosting the trees for the night. The sun was setting at this point. I didn't see anything, and it was real close. My only other thought was a bunch of neighborhood property dogs were still fired up a few minutes later and had settled down before I heard it. Never heard the bobcat hiss in person at this point, since they are in that area. It's all I could think of and why the dogs are all fired up. So I hurried the hell out of there. I'm not tangling with Big Kitty, if that's what it was. So a big cat scared him.
Maybe, but I would have maybe got out of there myself because I'm not, bobcats usually don't, there's no, I don't think there's any known attacks, just like coyotes.
No, I'll tell you what though, John, I can tell you something I just learned about our friend here from reading this, Alan, in this particular fishing spot. How good do you think the fishing was?
Not good, because he left.
That's right. It wasn't the bobcat. It was the fishing sucked.
Yeah. This one, because he's familiar with turkeys, roosting and this and that. And the dogs fired up. Yeah, maybe it was a wildcat going by, but maybe it was the psycho samurai guy.
Fire turtle. Just a turtle.
Yeah. The whooshing turtle.
The wandering turtle.
Exactly. But if it was a samurai sword being pulled and whipped around, I'm glad that Alan got out of there, because if he was going to be the next head in the guy's collection, hey, Alan's a nice guy and he contributes a lot and he's a great listener and we're glad to have him.
I like everything about him except for his last name. just saying.
Okay, sorry. We're Groves and I are in the one syllable club. And,
sorry, it's easy.
Yeah,
my name used to be hard. I fixed it.
Yeah. Oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
What
was it was Grovenescu. But I simplified it because I'm not selfish. That's why.
All right. Okay, the last one is a real.
Matt Daniels makes me crazy, John.
I can see that. I can see that. And you're not alone there. And I'm not going to veer off into Jack Daniels stories. This is a fishing podcast, and
we should, John, do a Fish Nerds happy hour show one night.
Should we?
Yeah. No.
You think that would be entertaining to anybody? Hey, some of those online parties used to throw back in the pandemic where it kind of turned into that. Yeah.
I do miss the pandemic sometimes.
You were always like, I'm recording this and I'm going to put it on the show. And you never did, which I'm glad.
No, there are parts of the pandemic that I miss a lot. But not many, not
many, but that was a nice silver lining.
Yeah.
Okay, last one is from John J. Murphy, and he is another longtime listener and a fun guy, a really swell guy, nice guy. And I'll do it. It's a one-liner. Well, I grew up in Salem, Massachusetts, and used to fish a cemetery pond, so I'll go with yes. And I think I need to sit down with John and get some specifics on this.
Well, it is Salem, so
that's what I'm saying. A Salem cemetery. I think the squeak of a mouse could set your mind going 100 miles an hour.
Yeah. So 20 years ago on Halloween, I got engaged in Andover, Massachusetts, and I dressed as Elvis, made my costume myself. Installed a cassette deck in the belt buckle, under the belt buckle, with speakers on the belt, and I played "It's Now or Never" for my wife. And then we dressed as Elvis and Priscilla and went to Salem, Massachusetts for Halloween that night. And it was an inversion day where it was 80 degrees on Halloween. And it was great. It was so fun. Salem, Mass. What a great place.
I've heard a lot of fun stories about Salem, Mass, and I may have to go check it out.
Yeah. It wasn't fun if you were a witch.
Back in the day, yeah, because that was when a woman learned how to do math, for example, she was probably burned alive.
Right. I should have said it wasn't fun if you were a smart woman.
Yeah.
They weren't likely witches. Yeah.
Yeah, they were not witches. It was a classic example of toxic hysteria, but we are not that type of podcast either. We're going to move on.
Okay.
To Phantom Casters from Rick Webster. I got this story off of onthewater.com. Spooky fishing stories. Tons of spooky fishing stories out there, folks. If you're into this, there's plenty of places you can go, but this website had a bunch. This was my favorite. Clay, read it to us.
I'm going to read. Okay.
Well, we want to take
I got you.
I don't want to hog it up.
All right. Phantom Casters. I was fishing the first beach at Sandy Hook in Jersey one late September when I got to the parking lot and not another car in sight. I set up, soaking clams on 2 rods before sunup. Sounds like a dirty story already, John. As the pre-dawn light began to show over the horizon, a thick bank of fog rolled in. Slack tide and zero wind, very peaceful, but not expecting anything spectacular. Suddenly, about 500 seagulls that had been resting on the roof of the bathhouse lifted into the air and began to dive noisily into the surf. The fog was so thick I couldn't see them, but I could hear them not 20 yards off the beach. Figuring a blitz of snappers, I sent a 3-ounce Yozuri popper into the fog, and it immediately came tight on what turned out to be a 12-pound albie. I was fighting this fish. The fog began to lift, and I could see I was surrounded by 25 to 30 other surf casters. I had no clue how they suddenly appeared at this stretch of beach is so wide open, so I would have seen them before the fog came in. No one spoke, and the only sounds were screaming gulls and the drags, as well as enjoyed a rare mix of blues and albies for the next 30 minutes in a classic fall blitz. As the action died down, the fog rolled in again, and I appeared to be all alone again. Since I was tired and a little spooked by the morning's events, I packed up my gear and headed back to the parking lot. Just like when I arrived, mine was the only car there. I have no idea where the other fishermen came from or how they disappeared into the day. I'm not entirely convinced they were ever there at all. There it is, story. Woo.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, that's, I mean, I'm like, you're like, oh, the timing, the this or that. I mean, there could be a logical explanation, but pretty freaky because the timing is tight. That there wasn't one of those guys left, or there wasn't one guy that said hello, or there wasn't one guy that hollered out woohoo, or there wasn't one guy that kind of straggled behind, or any of it. All the cars were gone, all the guys were gone. I'm down with it. I'm down with it being ghost fishing.
Have you ever been fishing and then someone's just there?
Yes.
Me too. Maybe they weren't.
Well,
maybe they're a specter.
Maybe they're a specter. Well, the thing is, I believe or half believe in a lot of things. So, and we won't expand on that, but I know that it can happen. I know that, well, just like in our last episode, Jeff's talking about how, X 100-pound bear can just sneak up right behind you and just suddenly be there. I know that fishers can do that too. We try to be a little quiet, and if you're by yourself and you're not wrapped up in your own problems and talking to yourself like I do a lot, which I don't do while I'm fishing, but other times maybe I do. So I have snuck up on people and had them jump, and I have had the same thing done to me.
John, I was fishing with my friend Chris Prue, who's been on the show before. We did a brook trout special a few years ago in a dead river, and he was fishing on one side of the river and I was on the other. And he was fishing down the bank, and 6 feet up from the bank from him, a black bear walked out of the woods, 6 feet from him. He could have turned around and touched the bear. And I'm yelling, but there's water rushing by. There's a bear behind you. There's a bear behind you. And he's just fishing away and smiling and waving at me. And the bear came within a few feet of him. And the bear never saw him, and he never saw the bear. Just were at different heights, like 6 feet up, but just 3 feet away. Yeah. So yeah, spooky things. Well, and he's dead now. We buried him. He did not die.
All right. Oh, Jiminy. Okay. Now, no Halloween would be complete without aliens and UFOs and that sort of carrying on. And this is one of the most famous alien abduction stories. There's people that are passionate on both sides of this story. I love it, mainly because it starts off with just being a simple fishing trip. Go down to the Pascagoula River in Pascagoula, Mississippi after work. Pascagoula, and trying to catch a few catfish or something in the Pascagoula River. Charles Hickson, age 42, and Calvin Parker, age 19. In 1973, on October 11th, went down to the Pascagoula River, and as dusk fell, they heard a whirring and whizzing sound. They saw flashes of blue light on the water. They looked up, and here came an oval-shaped object approximately 30 to 40 feet across, 8 to 10 feet high. It hovered over the ground, close to them. They were paralyzed with fear. Three creatures came out of the craft, not walking, but gliding, levitating out of the craft, came straight at them, seized them, and took them aboard. They were completely paralyzed, could not fight back. Still conscious, the two men conscious. The two men were subjected to the medical exam. And there was probing and poking and so forth, and a giant robotic eye that.
Man, John,
floated
nothing
around
cool
the
ever
room.
happens to me.
What's that?
Nothing cool ever happens to me.
Okay. Wow.
Go on.
The things that go on in your head, bro.
I'm
All
broken.
right.
I'm broken.
After the exam was over, they were returned to shore and the craft sped away into the sky. Now, this story gets a lot of believers because they went to the police. They were interviewed by the police. Also, one of the detectives left his recorder on, left it in the room when he left the room. And Charles and Calvin both didn't break down and said, oh, they were fooled or this or that. But they were, talking about, I still can't get my head around it, this kind of thing. I don't know what happened, Calvin wasn't helpful because he said, after the aliens grabbed him, he passed out.
Right. Well, who wouldn't?
And Charles, of course, was awake during his whole trip. So, and also after the story came forth, several hundred people say they saw weird blue lights. And over the years, other people have chimed in until we got 500-600 people saying, oh yeah, I saw lights that night. But on the debunk side, we have the idea that, Charles changed his story bit by bit over time. Calvin said he passed out, but then all of a sudden he had recalled memories of the incident, which can't, in trauma, sometimes recalled memories are false, sometimes they're true. If there's, a way you can, so you can't instantly just write that off. Charles Hickson, the older gentleman, was given a lie detector at the time, but it was by a reporter or by somebody from the UFO people that, it was not a professional polygraph person. Then when the police said, hey, we'll get an expert to come in and polygraph you, he refused to do it. There's also talk that there was an appearance deal or a book deal or a management deal involved in the first polygraph. So there's some, things there. But the thing is, and what keeps even the police that were there at the time, some of them say, look, I don't know what happened to these boys, but something happened to these boys. All right. And so where are you at with this? I mean, have you ever heard of it?
Abductions and probing?
No, but the Pascagoula incident, because it's
not by name, but the story sounds familiar to me.
Well, it's so familiar that the city of Pascagoula has actually put up a plaque saying this is where it happened. So when tourists want to go see the spot where it happened, there's a plaque there that talks about it, and you can decide for yourself. On the other part of the debunk side, it used to be a drawbridge there. That's why, people were like, well, they weren't even supposed to be fishing there. Why were they fishing there? Maybe they were, making this up because they weren't supposed to be fishing there. But we all sneak into places we're not supposed to go fishing, and I won't elaborate on that. We'll save that for another episode. But
we should do that. Laws we've broken.
Never anything serious, but yeah. Don't
things that are beyond the statute of limitations.
Yeah,
just a couple of murders.
Oh my gosh. Don't. You know how easy I am to divert down a trail. Now stop it. Just stop it. I want to stay on this right now. All right. But there was a drawbridge operator in those days. And that's one reason you weren't supposed to be there, because the boats had stopped for the drawbridge, et cetera, et cetera. And I guess they didn't want people snagging a boat and getting dragged into the water. And he said, I was there. I saw them down there fishing, but I just, people do it all the time. I don't always report them. I just, figured they'd be all right. And he goes, I didn't see none of this stuff that they talked about. So there's, people say there was drinking involved. Also, Calvin happens to be living with Charles at the time because there was rumors that he was being abused at home and so on and so forth. So pre-existing trauma, this, that, and the other thing. I'm kind of leaning toward the debunk. You know what a hypnagogic dream is, Clay?
I don't know that word, but I can guess.
Well, what do you think it is?
I think it's implanted memory.
Well, have you ever seen The Man in Black?
No.
Have you ever seen a thing where you were half asleep that you swore was real?
Yes.
Okay, that's a hypnagogic dream. I've had one very specific one where I thought it was a ghost on my ceiling.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt like I was being pressed into my mattress. I couldn't move. And somehow my rational mind said, look, if you can just move your foot a few inches to the side, this will be over. And it took me a bit, but I managed to move my foot. And then I looked up, and the ghost was actually a model airplane I had hanging up there. And I was okay. But they also call these sorts of things paroxysmal sleep disorders, which includes like incubus syndrome. You know what an incubus is or a succubus is?
Yes.
Okay.
Kind of.
Well, it's a demon that comes and does stuff to you in your sleep, and a very, very popular thing in the Middle Ages and the Renaissance to have in the land of great sexual repression that went on for centuries, in fact, ages. But all this comes under parasomnias, and a lot of people think that Charles was having a hypnagogic dream. So because a hypnagogic dream, if you can't shake it, or if it's multifaceted and goes on for a long time, it's virtually indistinguishable from reality. So the people that say, hey, they had the symptoms of having something really happen to them, something really did happen to them, and it felt real to them. And therefore, it doesn't matter that it is real. The fact is that these guys stuck to their story for decades there on out. And Charles passed away quite a while ago. The younger gentleman, Calvin, he just passed away here recently. But the legend remains of the Pascagoula alien incident. And the thing is, pop culture picked up on a lot of the facets of this, the way the aliens looked. These were not the aliens like out of Close Encounters of the Third Kind with the big glassy almond-shaped eyes and the big fat heads. They were the other kind with the wrinkled gray skin and the crab pinchers and the little like protrusions from where their ears should be, and kind of crazy. But that one became more popular and started showing up in encounters and so forth. And of course, the exam and the Betty and Barney Hill thing, had the exam. And so the exam where they probe your orifices and such.
Yes, the good kind of exam. Yes.
You sure you're really wanting your life to be more exciting, Clay?
I am.
You want your orifices probed by an alien?
Well, I don't want to talk about it that way. Like when you say it, it sounds less sexy. I don't know why you keep saying it. Never mind.
So you're coming down on the reality side, okay?
Well, when you say it, it turns me off. I don't know why. When I say it, it's hot.
Oh, no, the third kind of alien where, slim waisted, big on the top, big on the bottom.
That's John King talking, not Clay Groves.
Okay. Making some rash assumptions here. Okay. All right. All right already.
Got to wrap this up, John.
Guess what, Clay?
What?
These people have been listening to this crazy nonsense when they should have been out fishing.
They should have been, but it's fall. Who bothers? John, we have a lot of thank yous to do. First of all, thank our wives and families for allowing us to make this silly podcast and take the time to do it. Big thanks to you, John, for keeping it going while I took a little break. I appreciate you for doing that. Who else we thanking?
We got to thank Wally Pleasant for our show theme, Diana's Bath Salts for our Fish in the News theme, Dan Hennig for his nice little tune, Savannah Sunshine, which we used on the Laura Williams piece, Lauren Dusky for her instrumental Rollin', which we used on the Lake of the Woods piece. We got to thank Joe Henry for bringing us that report, Steve NcAngler and the Hatcher brothers for their fishing reports, Laura Williams, of course, for bringing her talk on lead-free fishing, and also our plan to organize the orgs and create the relationship between the market side and the public action side. Of course, we've got to thank our dedicated Fish Nerd Facebook group people, Chris Snodgrass and Alan Dumitrescu and John Murphy for their spooky fishing tales, Rick Webster for his Legion of Spirits surfcaster story, but especially you, the listener, for bringing your ears right on in here and letting us fill them up with fish stuff, spooky or not.
Perfect, John. So until next time.
Oh, wait a minute. I got to do like the pros do, dude.
Oh, go ahead.
I started adding this to the show. Fish Nerds is the creation of diabolical Dave Kellum and Clay Lamprey-mouth Groves. Clay is also our chief executive flesh-eating fish nerd. Our producer and co-host is John Jabberwocky King. Our demon horde of associate producers are Jeff Devilfly Danielson, Todd Black Cat Correa, Tim Terrorhook Beat, and our cute, friendly Wendy type witch flying above the rack, our own lovely Dark Martin. And until next time, follow the code of the Fish Nerds.
Oh, spawn early and often.
Never take a free lunch with strings attached.
And swim against the current every chance you get. We did it, John. We made a podcast.
Woo!
Fly fishing in a stream, getting those ankles wet, or deep in the ocean, casting nets. Fish nerds. Fish nerds. Fish nerds. It's a podcast. Just for the halibut. Fried in a basket or broiled in a pan. Eat it raw like you're in Siam. Fish nerds. Fish nerds. Fish nerds. It's a podcast.
We did it, John.
Get out of
Did
here.
it.
You look like you're going to pass out. I'll talk
I
to
only
you tomorrow.
got probed a little bit during the show, so it's a win. All right, good night, John King.
Good night, brother. See ya.